Thanks for having me. I'll kind of quickly give you a little more of my history just for context, and then maybe spend a minute talking about a topic that's fascinating me these days, and then open it up for questions. I think these events are best when they're not formal, so feel free to jump in if at any time you want to, or we can talk at the end. So my entrepreneurial journey began with some girl breaking up with me, which is where they all should begin. I was on my way to prom, and my prom date dumped me a week before prom. And I think I was in some mental funk and decided to start thinking about money instead of girls. And that led me to a conversation with a friend of mine whose father was in the carpet business, and we started talking about maybe when we go to Michigan, we were freshmen, we would take some of his carpet up and try to sell it. So we loaded up a truck full of carpet, and we drove it up to Michigan. This is back in 1987, and I had one of those aha moments where I realized that I was made to do this, whatever this of business is. It just felt natural. Talking to customers, thinking through, how to get product from here to there and how to make money. It just felt natural. And so we took up that truckload of carpet. It was a little van, and we sold it. And I think maybe we had, 20 carpets or so, and we each made $1,000. And that was about as rich as I've ever felt in my life. Because when you're 18, and you make $1,000 or $2,000 in cash, you're loaded. So I did that, and then that kind of sparked something where I decided, hey, I want to spend more time on this carpet business. And so for the next couple of years, I got very focused on how to grow that business. And what had happened is that University of Michigan at that time, there was a bunch of people selling stuff on the streets, and U of M decided that they were going to shut it all down. And somehow I became aware of this, I don't know, in digging around a bit. And so I began thinking there's got to be some way that U of M can't shut me down from selling carpet, because I needed that beer and pizza money. And I began researching kind of local commerce rules at the city hall, and I realized that you could get a peddler's license. And a peddler's license would allow you to basically, as long as you moved your truckload of carpet every hour or 2 hours, at least 5 feet, U of M couldn't shut you down. And so I got a peddler's license, which I think was made for people selling hot dogs. And when the police came to shut everybody down, and they did shut everybody down, we were there with our truckload of carpet, and no one else was able to sell. And so, of course, we had a great year, and that kind of set me on this journey, where I realized that not only did I love business, but I had some knack for it. That business got actually fairly large. We eventually had 5 or 6 universities that we were selling carpet at. I was maybe 20 or 21 and had truckloads of carpet and a bunch of people working all summer long cutting the carpet. And after that, I decided to go to law school, and we had started another company that was also doing pretty well. And so I had this little kind of growing empire of small businesses in college and law school. And then I met my partner, this guy Brad Keywell, and after law school we decided that we were going to try to buy a company and actually build a company. So we took the bar, and we had found a company right around then that we were interested in buying in Wisconsin. We literally took the bar, and the next day we moved out to Wisconsin, and we bought this small apparel manufacturer, and it was doing at the time a few $1 million in sales. It was an LBO. I put money in, and we borrowed money from the bank, and we grew that company over from, let's say 1994 to 1999. We grew that company from a couple $1 million in sales to maybe $20 million in sales. And I had this string of successes, and the end of that business was really my first experience with failure, because that company failed. At the time, the licensed apparel world was just really changing. The leagues, the NFL and the NBA, they were consolidating and giving all the rights to big companies like Nike and Reebok, and retailers were getting harder to deal with. And we had too much inventory and grew too fast and too much leverage and all that stuff that people talk about. And that business began to really suffer. And it became apparent to us in like probably 1998 or 99 that we couldn't save the business. There was nothing we could do that was going to turn it around. And so because there were two of us, we kind of divided and conquered. Brad, I was running this company and trying to keep it alive as best I could, and Brad was going to go try to figure out what we ought to do next. And at the time, the internet was really exploding, and we began thinking about how could we apply what we had learned in manufacturing children's clothing to the internet. And we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and eventually wrote a business plan for a business called Starbelly, which was supposed to use technology to let people design small lot-sized products. So if you wanted 12 baseball hats or 24 golf balls or a dozen pens for your company logo, with your company logo on it, you could use Starbelly to do that. And we wrote that business plan in March of '99 and really caught the beginning of the insanity of the internet. We wrote the business plan in March of '99. We raised our first round in May of '99. Somebody put $1.5 million in at a $10 million valuation. And then 2 months later, somebody knocked on our door and put $8 million in at a $40 million valuation. And then 2 or 3 months later, somebody knocked on our door again and said, we want to put in $50 million or $100 million at a $200 million valuation or more. And that all happened in about 6 or 7 or 8 months. And it was literally a moment in time. It's unexplainable, but it was a moment in time when there just capital was finding these businesses in irrational ways. And so we were about to go close that big round of capital, and a company called Halo in town knocked on our door and said, don't raise money, let us just buy you. And so we ended up selling the company. Unfortunately, my second experience with failure was at the company who bought us, Halo, because about a year after they bought us, they went bankrupt. Now I think they're still around, but they reorganized in bankruptcy. They had acquired a bunch of companies, maybe 30 or 40 companies, and they too had piled on too much debt and too much leverage and didn't integrate these businesses, and we were the straw that broke the camel's back, and they eventually had to reorganize. So I'd had this kind of crazy early career with all this success, and then I had these crazy failures, one after another. I was 28 or 29, and I had the rare fortune of making $70 million in a year and losing it in a year. So this huge kind of up and down. And then I went, after that experience, I decided I was going to take everything I had learned, kind of a very simple operating lesson as an entrepreneur. I was going to redo everything I did that worked out well, and I was going to not do everything I did that worked out badly. And that was going to be my plan. And so we started a company called Inner Workings in September of 2001, literally right as the towers were going down. That business, we just did it differently. Now I'd had this great crash course in building technology companies that you just couldn't. It was like an education it's hard to pay for. In that I was building a tech company right in the middle of all that insanity when tech companies were exploding, and so we were able to learn really quickly. So I in that year when Starbelly was being built, I really got a chance to understand how to build a tech company. When we built Inner Workings, we applied that knowledge pretty well, and so Inner Workings began to grow pretty quickly. I can't remember the exact numbers, but maybe we did a few million in sales our first year, and then 7, and then 15, and then 50, and then 100, or something like that. And we took that company public in 2006. Around that same time the Inner Workings was exploding, Brad and I started a company called Echo together, which was using now Inner Workings. That began what's really become a streak of companies where it's really become our singular expertise is really analyzing large amounts of data and trying to find arbitrage within that data, which is really all we've done with our career since 2001, since we started Inner Workings, is try to figure out how do we get our hands on big chunks of data and then mine that data and try to find arbitrage within a market. So we were doing that in the printing industry. Inner workings is in printing, and that was making that company grow. And then we decided to do it in the transportation space, or being a freight broker, logistics space. We started Echo in 2005, and that grew even faster than Inner Workings, and it went public, I think, in 2009. Then in 2006, we started our third company in this series called, the time was called Media Bank. It changed its name to MediaOcean. It was using that same, analyzing large amounts of data, looking for arbitrage, to find ways to more effectively buy and sell media, like newspaper time and radio time and TV time. That company grew. We just sold it last year, but it was bigger than Inner Workings or Echo. And so we had this string of 3 companies in a row, Inner Workings, Echo, and MediaOcean, all thriving, all doing well. And we were really kind of firmly planted in the B2B space. And then a guy who was working for me at Inner Workings had an idea to start a company, which we called The Point, to try to get groups together that could solve problems. And we got fascinated with that, and fascinated about this idea of leveraging the power of the internet and leveraging data to help small manufacturers, to help small merchants reach a large amount of customers. That was kind of in our wheelhouse. So I put $1 million in that business and told the guy to drop out of school and we'd go start it together. And he did, and that became The Point. We did that for about 1.5 years, and it wasn't going well. We eventually pivoted to, instead of getting groups together to solve problems, get groups together to get a discount from their local merchant. And I always say that, sadly, people like to save money more than they like to save the world. And so Groupon began to grow almost, it was called Get Your Groupon back then, but we changed the name to Groupon within a few months, and it began to grow very quickly. In fact, I mean, it's a kind of unprecedented growth. I think we did like 30 million our first year in sales, then we did 700 million, and then we did 4 billion. And then we did 5.4 billion. So like that was like 4 years. Around that same time, we now had these 4 companies all thriving. We decided people were knocking on our door saying, will you invest in my company? And I had this great idea, and we were seeing a lot of great ideas. So we decided to institutionalize that by creating a fund called Lightbank to basically invest in largely Midwest, a lot of Chicago tech companies that we were seeing. So we started that in 2010, and that now we've made about 90 investments over the past 5 or 6 years. And then in about a little over 1.5 years ago, we started our 5th company. It's Inner Workings, Echo, MediaOcean, Groupon. Our 5th in this kind of post-1999 era is a company called Uptake. My partner Brad had this idea to begin, again, leveraging the power of data, begin to collect large amounts of data coming off sensors and try to help big manufacturers analyze that data so they could make real-time decisions. It's an emerging space called the Internet of Things, or at the edge, where people are these kind of small pocket computations occurring in real time out in the real world where there's all this trucks and heavy equipment and all that stuff. And so we began, so that company began to grow. You're welcome to tape this, you just can't post it if you don't mind. You can totally tape, by the way, just I don't know if it shows up somewhere, someone's gonna yell at me. But I don't mind you taping it, at all. And so so that was Echo. That began to really grow, and today that company has gotten quite large. I mean, it's private, but it's now approaching nearly 500 people that work for Uptake, and it's really become a huge Chicago success story. And so that's our world today. We have these 5 kind of companies, bigger companies that we spend our time building and running, and then we have this fund, and all of it is here in Chicago. It is, I think all total, we have about 15,000 people in our world, probably 5,000 in Chicago, and they're all like 27. It's just a mountain of young salespeople and engineers and people in product and customer service and logistics and marketing, and it's a huge group of really talented people that are trying to build these tech companies at scale far away from where they normally get built, which is Silicon Valley. And so, I recently, so where I'm going to try to not get in trouble, but I spent a lot of time, Brad and I spend a lot of time focused on how to solve one problem at a time, right? I mean, these businesses are basically solutions to problems, or in some cases, unsolved problems, right? I mean, Groupon is now 7 years old, and it's a very big business by all measures. It does over $6 billion in sales a year, but it's still an unsolved problem. I mean, Groupon is, in its 7th birthday, is still far from a truly mature business in that, you're not seeing today what it's ultimately, hopefully going to become, and it's an unsolved problem. But I recently have become super fixated. I mean, I've lived through, when you've been doing this as long as I've been doing it, I mean, I'm 46, right? I'm making it sound like I'm 90, but I've been in technology now, since the late 90s. And so I've really lived, in my lifetime, I've really lived through the kind of 3 great technology paradigm shifts that we've seen off the microprocessor, right? I've lived through the personal computer. I mean, it didn't exist when I was young, and it existed when I was young. I've lived through the internet. When I started working, there was no email, there was no internet. And I've lived through mobile. And where I've become super fascinated and fixated these days is in none of those. I've become super fixated with biotech, which I'm convinced is really in my lifetime will be the 4th great technology paradigm shift, and far greater than the other 3. You could make an argument it'll make the other 3 seem irrelevant, because when you can sell time, there's really nothing else that matters, right? I mean, a TV is cute, but time is time. And we sit, I think, on the precipice of being able to actually sell time, where companies will emerge in in multiple areas in biotech and healthcare, where they'll be able to use the power of data and the power of the new computational energy that we have to basically look inside our bodies and do amazing things. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about that because I, at this point, like to think about big problems. And that is my world in a nutshell. I'll end here and then happy to take any questions you want. I teach a class at U of C, and it's a class on building technology companies and doing it's an easy class to teach because it's all about my life and what I've done. But it's a hard class to teach in that when you sit in these rooms with people, especially younger people who are starting their career and they really want advice on how to replicate this success. And unfortunately, I have no good advice, which leaves people longing. But the reality is it's very similar to, I think, asking a parent who has a good kid, tell me how you have a good kid. The parent would inevitably say to you, I have no idea. It's a zillion small things I did. It certainly wasn't one, right? I was a parent every day, and I made a zillion decisions, some good, some bad. And at the end of the day, here's my kid, and he's great. And it's the same thing in business. I mean, at the end, I can tell you, there are certain things that we do. We fail fast. We're not afraid to pivot. I mean, there's certain characteristics that I think we have. But at the end of the day, it's a million small decisions. And anybody who says otherwise is just selling you a story. If you jump into business, especially businesses that embrace technology, if you're disrupting a market, if you're doing something new, you're inevitably going to fail and make a zillion mistakes and make a zillion decisions. And as long as you're nimble and willing to pivot and tenacious, you'll work your way through it. Or you won't, and you'll start again and hopefully have success the second time. But I'm happy to kind of tell you anything I can, and or talk about biotech. That's my story.
Questions? Thank you.
No, thank you.